Well, welcome to another Global Radio Ideas webinar. We appreciate you watching wherever you are in the world. My name is Ken Benson from the P1 Media Group, and our company provides research and insights to radio brands and stations around the world. And of course, joining me from Stuttgart, Germany, the home of Mercedes-Benz, my guest host, Andy Sandeman. He's the CEO of Benztown, which is a global leader in imaging and production. So welcome back, Andy.
Hey, Ken. Hey, Pat. Happy to be back. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Webinar number 14, PD Summer School, the greatest radio advice ever. As always, and Ken mentioned that the chat box is activated. Let us know where you're watching. If you have questions, type it in on the chat box right upside. We'll be taking your questions later in the show, so feel free to send in your questions for Pat.
Great. So just want to remind you that part of the webinar is called The Greatest Radio Advice Ever. And I learned this advice from Pat a few months ago and was just blown away by it. In fact, I shared it with a couple of stations we work with. And a few of the reactions I got is, this is mind-blowing and inspiring. Another one was the best use of 17 minutes ever. So we're going to get to that in around 30 minutes time, so you do not want to tune out. And again, those are programmers' words, not mine. So let's talk about this guy, because I know a lot of people maybe don't know him, but he's done so much in a 50-year career in radio, and he got into radio by pure accident. He was working on an accounting degree and then really disappointed his parents after he did a weather report on a radio station one night. It turns out the PD heard his break and offered him a job the next day. So that weather report led to 50 years in radio and an extremely successful career too. He was a DJ in many cities, including Hartford, Cincinnati, Detroit, and New York City, and even at the iconic CKLW in the 70s, which I know a lot of people probably viewing, at least in other parts of the world, never heard of this radio station. But it was one of the biggest in North America in the 60s and 70s. And one of those huge AM signals that you could probably hear in what, at least half the U.S. and Canada at night.
Yeah, easily. Yeah, it was half of both countries. When I first started, I did for 1 week the 9 to midnight show. So it's at night where you get bounced on an AM radio station, and I'm taking requests, and I'm thinking it's the suburbs of Detroit, and like, well, where are you? What is that suburb? Well, I'm in St. Louis. What? So wow. Yeah, no, honest to God, yeah. So it's, it was good for like 1,500 miles in any direction at night. So yeah, sorry.
Amazing. and was the third biggest jock in North America on that radio station at that point. Just by the sheer size of the station, it was incredible. The Big Eight's program director later too. He also went on to program some monster AC stations and hot ACs, including Light in Detroit, Warm in Cincinnati, and Mix both in Montreal and Toronto. And then he decided he was going to be the big boss and was the GM for radio stations in Calgary and Toronto. Later, got smart again, became head of programming for a major Canadian radio group and launched the Virgin Radio brand throughout Canada. He was a Canadian PD of the Year and Station of the Year on multiple occasions. And our guest is a dual citizen, spends his time between Toronto and Florida. So joining us from Orlando today, without Mickey Mouse, welcome our teacher from PD Summer School, the legendary Pat Holliday.
Wow, big intro. Thank you. That's really hard to live up to. I'm joining from Florida with no air conditioning. Our air conditioning went out. So if you start to see bullets come down, you'll know what that deal is.
I'm pretty sure the first question is going to bring this bullets down. So, I mean, Pat, we heard, you had one impressive career, and we'll get into the learnings more deeply, I bet, soon. But as you all know, first question of this webinar is kind of like my favorite question because it's different. So, Pat, tell us something, and let us start with this. Tell us something people don't know about you.
Yeah, my life has been intertwined with computers from the very beginning. When I got the actual job, that I had, I was actually working at IBM in a summer job during college. Hey, let's go down and see the DJ. So that's, anyway, and knowing computers, learning how to program and all of that stuff along the way helped me. And the thing that most people would not know unless you were actually in Montreal when I was there at the time, I was with computers from the very beginning, even mainframes before PCs, and all the Photoshops, every version all the way along the way. And in 93, 94, somewhere in there, the station website in Montreal, we were doing it, and there was a company who did the back end, the HTML code, but I did all of the graphics and the layout and and the writing of which you have for each of the pages on under each section. Apple took that. Apple.com, Apple Cupertino, their main website. They took that and used that as an example of what you can do on a Macintosh. Because it's the front end of the internet when people started, doing things on the internet and making websites. I think it's the only radio station ever to actually be on Apple's home site. So I was pretty proud of that. That was it's a pretty cool thing.
And if Steve Jobs only gave you a couple shares of Apple stock for using the radio station,
yeah, really,
you'd be a very wealthy man.
Yeah, or if they just sent me a new one, here's a new Mac, here's a demo or whatever. Got nothing.
All right. Well, summer school is now in session. And the reason we invited Pat Holliday to be our guest today was to spread the word about this incredible project he's been working on in his retirement. And really how great this is for anybody that's a radio program director interested in becoming one, working in radio programming. And best of all, it's free. And we're going to tell you about that today and share some of the terrific lessons he's put together thus far, because this is still a work in progress. So, Professor Pat, tell us about the Musicom Academy.
Yeah, Musicom Academy is something that, it was bugging me for ages, and it really sort of started. First off, I think probably every PD that's watching, or everybody who's going to be PD, that you just get thrown into the job. Your very first one, nobody teaches you anything. You have no idea about half of what you're doing. If you're a document, you got some of it down, but a lot of it you don't. You get thrown in, and I always just thought that was wrong, but it was the way it was. But then when I became a general manager, before I was allowed to be a general manager, the guy I work for, Gary Slade in Standard Broadcasting, he said, well, I want you to learn how to be a GSM before I do that. So he made me take a GSM course, and it was like a 6-7 month course, and it was pretty intense. Wow. And it sort of struck me. It's like, along the way as a jock and as a PD, I had gone to sales seminars. I teach salespeople how to do stuff. If you're an accountant, you learn how to be an accountant. If you're going to be a GSM, there's courses for that. There's nothing for a PD. And I just thought that's so wrong. I thought it should be changed, but technology was hard to do it up until now. Now with YouTube, you can actually do it. You can do it for the world. You just have to have the understanding of how to, edit audio and video and all of that stuff. And I obviously have the knowledge and experience. So I just thought I'm just going to do it, and give it away for free. And, I'm not trying to make any money on it. I'm retired. I don't really care about any of that. I just wanted to leave something for, for the kids and stuff. And, and I know most of this that I'm doing is evergreen. It's valid today. It'll be valid 10 years from now. So that's what it is. That's the course. Everything I've ever seen, heard, stolen, whatever, 55 years of doing radio. Yeah.
That's very gracious of you. So when we spoke with Lee Abrams, and I don't know if you've seen the webinar, he chatted about how easy it is these days, obviously, to buy users. And a lot of stations today have a lot of so-called users, right? Lee said, and that stuck with me, that the key is to turning users into fans. I mean, we've heard that phrase before, and by digging through the Musicom Academy courses, lesson number 27 is called One Easy Step to Turn a Plain Listener to a Fan. So Pat, I mean, what's the one easy step? So let us know how we can do that.
Yeah, and it's the whole thing. I agree with Lee completely, because there's also a lesson. I don't know. It's one of the early ones, right in the beginning, 2 or 3, where the lesson is about what is the job of a PD, and it is all about that. Exactly, but there's no specifics really. It's just how to think about it. But for what you're asking about, I happened 2 things sort of coincided with me at roughly around the same time. I was at a convention, and there was a guy, head of marketing for Harley Davidson. He was doing a speech about how they saved Harley Davidson because it was about to go under. And this guy you see on the screen, this is what saved the company. This guy, or at least people like him.
Wow.
What they found they decided to do parties around the country because they figured we're out of money, we're going to go under. And in the midst of the parties, they encountered people like this and talked with their customers, and they found out the main reason people buy a Harley is because they want to feel special, because their entire normal life, they're ignored by their kids, they're ignored by the people at work, they're ignored by their boss, their wife, whatever. They're sort of semi-nobodies, and they wanted to actually feel special. So when you strap on a Harley and go riding down the street, people look at you and you're special. And that's what saved that company. Right around the same time, Walter Sabo, who was consulting our news talk station, he happened to come into town. We're having a conversation, and just out of the blue, he sort of spit this thing out. And what I'm about to tell you. And I didn't hear any of the rest of the conversation. My mind was just going like, wow, that's awesome. That coincides with the Harley thing. And what he said was so simple. And it was awesome for a morning show. It's awesome if you have a news talk station. What he simply said was, why don't you tape everybody? And the 24-hour documenter is running anyway, so it's easy. Tape everybody who calls in and is on the air. Ask them if they want to have a copy of it, which everybody's going to say yes. And then email them a copy of what they did. So if they're on the morning show bit, mail it to them. Like, can you imagine if somebody was on with Stern and then got in their email them being on with Stern, or Maddie in the Morning in Boston, or anybody big, or just somebody local in your market? The thought was they're going to feel special. They're going to start playing it for people. They're going to be a salesperson for your radio station. They're going to go around and play it for people and be proud of it and be proud to listen. So they're going to feel special. They just instantly become a fan. That was the whole premise. And I think it's an easy thing to do. Super easy.
So Ken is still a fan of Howard Stern, I assume, because Ken Benson actually was was called out by Howard Stern one day and has it on tape. So,
there you go. How many people have you played that for?
Quite a few in the last year. I kind of forgot I had it. Then somehow it came back around to haunt me. But it was a 45-minute ripping on the air. It's a classic piece of audio. I'm glad to have it. So,
sorry for pointing that out.
So we're chatting with Pat Holliday. The session's called PD Summer School, and you don't want to leave class early today because still to come, Pat will share the greatest radio advice ever. But first, let's go to lesson 21 in Music Comm Academy. 5 things a jock can do to make themselves great exceptionally fast. What are those?
Okay, this comes from when I first started out in radio, and they all come from there. And essentially, what this is, and a few of the other things, is to try to get you better faster than you ever should be able to. And that goes for PD type things too, which I think will come up a little bit later. But this is for a jock. Early on, I sort of realized in the beginning, I'm like, I've been doing it like maybe a month. I'm the weekend guy. That's pretty much it. I'm doing Saturday overnights. And I couldn't hear the difference between good and bad. So you have to sort of tune your ear, and that takes a long time to tune your ear. And it's like, well, how would I do that? What's the deal? So one of the 5 things was I went into the production studio and just started to do national spots over and over and over again on my own, like hours and hours, night after night after night. I would take a national spot that some guy did, and I thought, man, this is awesome. I would write down the copy. I would get music that sounded very much like what was on that, or the exact same music. Sometimes you had the ability to do that, and I would do my version of it, and I would compare it right back to back with the real one. And after a while, my ear could start to hear the difference of inflection and that type of stuff that would take me years to kind of pick up. I could sort of pick it up in months. So, I would say that was an awesome way of getting fast as a young jock, quick, because it tunes your ear and it turns your mind tunes your mind to hear the differences in things. So, that was, one way, doing voiceover production. Another way was I started out with 3 guys, of which all 3 of us, and I started out in a little tiny town of like under 20,000 people, one radio station there that was on the air, and all 3 of us got to New York City on major radio stations in under 5 years. I got there a little under 2 years. The other guys got there, 4 years, so and so, with long times there. Like Max Kinkle, Supermax was one. He was on CBS FM for, I think like 15 years. Another guy, Dr. Don Reagan, he was on WXLO. He got there the last one, but the reason he did the last one was because he started a broadcast school in Albany, and he just sold it 40 years later, for millions and millions of dollars. But he still was a great jock. So, what we would do is the three of us would get together and be brutal air checkers. I mean, we're kids and we would rip the living crap out of each other. It was brutal. Things that no PD in the right mind would ever say to another, to a jock that's working for them. But, if you're starting out and you're a jock, find some other people who you really trust, because that's what's key. You start to learn later on as a PD. You got to have trust with your people. They got to trust you that you're trying to help them and you're not just trying to rip them at, and that type of thing. Anyway, so, that was another one. Find somebody to do air check sessions with, and don't hold back. Just let it rip, because you get better faster. You really do. You start to think of things. They'll hear stuff, that you don't hear. Another one that I did was, and this would go for any job really. I gave myself 2 years to make it, or I would quit. I would just be an accountant, because I wanted to make the majors. I didn't want to be in a small market forever. So I committed to 2 years. And then another one that goes along with this, this would be like whatever that is, number 4. I would do absolutely anything it took in those 2 years to move myself along. I would go to any city if it was going to make me better. I would take any job that would make me better. It didn't matter what it was. So that was the commitment. And and the other last thing was, which is really easy if you're a jock right now, and you don't want to do any of the other things, or you're already sort of doing it, is just move the 5 elements, of what a jock has. Just move them around and continually keep moving them and keep track of what you're doing, because it forces you to be creative. And the 5 elements are, it's usually when you're doing an outro or an intro, what you have at your disposal is the title, the art, it's the title and artist of the song. You have the time, you have your name, and you have the call letters. You just need to start moving those around, those 5 elements, or maybe you only have 4 elements because you're not doing the time anymore. Keep moving them around, and it forces your sentencing, the way you talk, to be different. So instead of, a lot of jocks would just get into a habit of sort of saying the same type of sentence over and over and over again. But if you force yourself to move them around, you can sound amazingly creative, and you're really just doing the basics. So it's a really easy way to sound better without doing a whole lot.
Yeah, it's great advice. I think the time framing, I wrote that down. The time framing is really, really cool. And what I remember, totally off topic, is like the being brutal honest. I remember when Ollie, my partner, and I worked at the same radio station, and we were critiquing like our work almost on a daily basis. Was kind of PD would have never told us like that dramatically, like if that promo or that copy was a good one or not. So I think that definitely helped. So making the bridge to create the creative side of radio. I mean, I obviously still love being in the studio, and after so many years, my passion is still creating imaging, music libraries, jingles, everything that basically makes noise and sounds. But in my own experience, many programmers, and I myself as well now with the creative team, have a very difficult time managing creative people. So lesson 16 is leading creative people. So first, what comes to mind for me is like, why leading and not managing? And the second part of the question is like, what's the lesson? Like, what do people need to basically learn to get better leaders or managers with creative people?
Yeah, I have this is a tough one, sort of the answer, depending on what you're sort of looking for as a person. Like, so somebody like Valerie Geller or Tracy Johnson, who I know you had on, when you want to get into really specifics, they spent, the brunt of their life into one particular area. I had a lot of creative people that worked for me, and I used to go at it because ultimately then, as a PD, as a manager, even right now, I'm a jock. I just think of myself as a jock. That's how I started. That's my mentality. And I remember what it was like to be a jock and have people do air check sessions with me, how I felt and all that other stuff. So just in general, I tried to approach the creative people with a few things in mind. Number 1 or 2, or probably in no particular order. Number 1, I felt that I had to have their back at all times. If I get a call from somebody and, hey, your morning person said this, I think you should be fired. I'd thank you, sir, or thank you, ma'am. I'll go talk to him right now. I'll talk to him right this moment. Okay, thank you. You good hell. Okay, great. Hang up the phone and go back and just keep doing what I was doing. I would just basically ignore it, unless it was something like, okay, that might be bad. Let me go check. So, but you got to have their back, and it kept coming up over and over during radio, especially when I was, running a news talk station, because there's big egos there, and and everybody, half the audience has always got the other opinion. You got to have people's back. I think people need to trust you. I think you need to be honorable. I think you need to be kind to those people. And the other thing is, when I first started out as a jock, and then got to the majors, and this is going to be probably the opposite of what most people will say, but it's just what I believe. When I was in New York City, just as an example, and we'll get into this later on with the best advice thing, I had an air check session there, and it was the only one I had in 2 years. I was there 2 years. I had one air check session. I was at CKLW on the air, as a jock there, monster station, probably for 12 years. The only time I had an air check session was when there was a new PD change. New PD would come in, they want to do air checks with everybody, talk, get the friendly, and that was it. No more. So wow. To me, I think a lot of creative people, they're very protective of what they're creating. It's theirs. They don't want you messing with it. You have to go at it differently. You have to sort of, get to be friends where they trust you and you're talking. I would talk a lot of things, in the hallways with them, or they would come into my office and we're talking about everything but their show, and then I would start to lead them around to, hey, did you ever thought of this? Or, hey, you know what I heard on so-and-so show? Even I just make that up because I didn't hear it. I heard them do that. It was really pretty cool. Well, yeah, what was that? Well, do you want to know? Yeah, well, explain it to me. And I would explain it. Now it's their idea. Okay, I'm not ramming it down their throat. I still hate, when somebody tells me what to do, my back goes up. It's just the way it is. So I never like to do that to anybody else. I like to explain, make it their idea, and sort of lead them to come to the same conclusion, and then just let them take it. It's more like, telling them, this is what I would like done, and then let them come up with their own way of doing it. It's funny, I saw some other things later on. Warren Buffett has got like 40 companies working for him underneath Berkshire Hathaway. He can go an entire year and never talk to the CEO of one of his subsidiaries. An entire year. I mean, he just trusts them to do the right thing. And, and then also, I remember reading a thing by, I can't think of the guy's name. It was one of the management groups, the guy that invented management. And he had said the thing like, when you hire somebody and they have a really great skill at a particular area, let's just say it's a promotion manager, and they're super creative. They can come up with ideas left and right, but they they can't do the contest sheets. They screw all that stuff up. The whole thing there was, don't be bugging him about the contest sheets and all the little things. Concentrate on the important thing that he does better than anybody else. Lean on that and just get an assistant or find somebody else to do the menial stuff. Because if you concentrate on the things the person doesn't do well, they shut down in the other area that they're really good at. So, I would throw all those things out, and that's kind of how I handled creative people. A lot of it was I left them alone to be creative and didn't micromanage them.
Yeah, great advice. And I certainly agree with letting it become their idea. That's so critical. You plant those seeds, and then maybe take longer than you want for it to sink in. But at some point, it's like, hey, I think we should do this. Great.
Yeah. And if you do it enough, where somebody really trusts you, a lot of times, and maybe it was just me because I was always walking around the radio station. I didn't hold up in my office. I was always moving around and stuff because to me, they were my friends. They weren't working for me. I was always uncomfortable with power in that realm type stuff. So, to me, they were my friends. They just come out and hang around the office. Then it becomes easy to just start talking about stuff, and boom, and they take it and run with it.
Yeah, I definitely need to get better with this.
All right. So if you have a question for Professor Pat today, make sure you put it in the chat box. We'll be getting those in a few minutes, and he'll be answering all your questions. So let's move to Musicom Academy, lesson number 9, programming commercials, which in my opinion is a lost or forgotten art. Something I used to do. I used to, run concert commercials first and the most hated advertiser in the market last and other things. But when I talk with clients about it today, many make excuses, blame the traffic department for not being able to do it, or they've never even thought of the concept. So, Professor Pat, tell us why
Yeah.
programmers should be programming the commercial breaks.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I first encountered when I got to CKLW. I'm a kid, and they had rules for everything there because that station was unbelievably thought out, super well. Bill Drake and I can't think of his name, Drew, Paul Drew. They built a station. They were unbelievably awesome programmers. And what their rules were there, which I just kept doing, was long before short. That was number one. You put long spots before short spots, and you try to do, as you just said, Ken, the best spots first. And there was a hierarchy of the way you would do it. Essentially, the overall overriding concept was you want to take a spot set and blow it by people so they don't really know what's happening. I mean, that's pretty much, you're messing with their heads. You want to sort of slide them by so they don't notice them. I'm sure clients may not be thrilled with that, but that's, as a programmer, that's what you're kind of trying to do. So the way it was so if you're doing live spots, which would come up, you would do those first, assuming that they're long. So if you had a 60-second long, you would do the 60-second spot, the live spot first, the long live spot, because it would sound like jock talk. If somebody's not really paying attention, they think the jock's just talking and the stop set hasn't really started. Then from there, the first thing you would go into would be like if you had a full jingle, the whole commercial is a jingle, that would go first. It sounds like a song. Maybe even if it had a 3-second intro before that somebody started singing about Coca-Cola, let's just say, I'd actually talk that up like it's a song. I'd talk up the intro to the commercial. Then from there it would be donuts, jingles with talking inside. And then it would be the produced spots, produced music, sound effects, whatever, with talking over the top. And then after that, it would be the crappy spots, which is just, pure dead talk. And and that's the way you would lay them out. Cold spots last, and it works really good. There's some other things that I didn't put in this because they're kind of iffy to do. But do you remember? There was the beautiful music station that many years ago. The guy's name was Scholke that did them. It was like the elevator music type stuff, and they were pretty decent stations. They used to actually, and I did that for a few stations on more than a few occasions. It's really interesting. They would take the stereo commercials on a stereo FM station and mono them out, because what would end up happening, they would drop in volume. They didn't quite, they weren't as dynamic as the music around them. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty, kind of risky. Yeah, but I did that a few times. Some people speed things up a little bit. Instead of being 60 seconds, it's a 59. But I mean, these are the main ones. Anybody can do, these things, and that we're just laying out, the good stuff before the bad stuff, basically.
Right.
So, okay, speeding up commercials. Don't tell anyone.
No, nobody does it now, I'm sure.
So radio is art and of course science these days. So I feel personally the science is more easy part for a lot of the programmers these days. So the art can be challenging, I think, sometimes in the climate we're living now. So in the programming experience that I came across with PDs, I was working with using feeling, intuition, gut instinct was always kind of like crucial to make the radio station come alive and be, let's say, more successful or more interesting. So lesson 24 in the Musical Academy is make your intuition help you build a better station. So, I mean, it's a pretty brave statement, but why should people use their intuition and gut instinct, in your opinion? Why do you think this comes before or with science as well?
Yeah, because, oh my God, there's so many different reasons for this, but just in general, I think intuition is super massive important for almost everything. I read this thing in Psychology Today, and it was about Joe Montana, and this was ultimately what it was. Intuition isn't a feeling. It's not a gut feel. It's not all those things that people describe it, where they dismiss it. Intuition is extreme experience on autopilot. It's like everything that your mind is cranking along because you have a subconscious mind and it's running full tilt all the time, and it's taking all the data just like some supercomputer and trying to put things together. And when you get a feeling of, my station sounds funny, something's wrong with it, and most people would just dismiss it, or they give it a reason. They won't go any farther than that, as opposed to, well, I keep getting this feeling like the station is down. Why does it feel down? And then I go looking for an answer. Why is that? I would listen to my intuition because it's experience running on autopilot. If you understand intuition to be that, that's the critical part. And then a lot of the lesson is, much like I was saying earlier, with the 5 things to make you better and doing the spots in the production room, there's ways of tuning your ear as a PD to hear things more than a regular other PD. A lot of it is your situations, but a lot of it is just really super paying attention to what you're doing. As some simple examples, it would be like, say there's a song, by a particular artist who is only an AC artist. That's all they're always AC, 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 AC. And all of a sudden they get picked up on a CHR station or maybe even a rock station for some reason. And you go like, well, why did that song cross? What was the real reason? Dig into it, think about it, give it some thought. Why did that cross? Why did none of the other ones, why didn't any of the other ones cross? Why do some songs, when they get older, they get softer. Some acts are really cool, and then 10 years later, like, they got baggage, and ooh, I don't want to play them. You want to keep all of that in your mind and pay attention to that type of stuff, and also listen to other radio stations. Now with the internet, to me, I mean, oh my God, we're so lucky that you can go online and listen to stations anywhere in the world, listen to good ones, listen to bad ones. Your mind will start to tell the difference of what's good and bad. It'll be able to start to delineate the difference. Find a radio station, say you listen in, I don't know, let's just say Los Angeles, and there's, let's say there's 3 AC radio stations there. That's the leader, and these other 2 can't catch up. Well, listen to them and try to figure out why that one's in the lead. And, really give it some thought, and, and listen to them, and your mind will start to be able to discern the difference. So when you're in a situation where you're the 3rd, FM AC radio station in a market, you can actually start to alter your radio station to get around or catch the first one, because you can hear those minute differences. It's it's a huge, powerful tool that very few people use, but it's important. It really is.
Yeah, Mike McVeigh wrote an interesting article about that this week too. I've seen it somewhere in the trades about most of the PTs hardly ever listen to their own station, and I totally agree. I mean, it's a super important thing to listen not just to your own, but specifically to your own station, and get this senses like sharpened up. So, Pat, one thing that I'm really interested in is, and this came up when we were preparing this call. Obviously, I've done jingles my entire life, so I learned that you created jingle packages back in the day, also for CKLW, and you even syndicated those, which is like, I hardly have heard of a radio station syndicated their own jingle packages. So I think it's more like a imaging and a sonic or a sound question, but as you've done that before, as so many other things, I think it's appropriate to have it here. So what do you think programmers should do to stand out from the pack sonically? And what should they do to reinforce their position, like their stationality in the market? Like, what do you think, like, of these two answers, like, for that two-polar question?
I think that again goes right back to sort of the intuition area of, when this is the way I program. I know Mike McVeigh thinks the same way, and I know a bunch of other PDs think the same way. If I come into a market, and I'm going to get to answer your question in just a second, Andy, because I'm going to lead right to it.
Absolutely.
If I come into a market and I'm new there, I'll listen to a lot of the radio stations. I'll just keep that are roughly that I'm going to have to compete with. That's a format that I got to worry about. The other ones I'll just totally ignore. And I would just keep listening to them, bouncing. I'd do like an hour on this one, hour on that one, hour on this, hour. After a while, another radio station would start to form in my head. It would be the one that's missing. A station would literally start to form. I would start to hear a station, and I know a lot of PDs. Their minds work sort of the same way. So I might hear a station and go, in my head, I'm like, these other stations, they're really leaning pretty white. I'm going to lean mine R&B. They're all sort of maybe a little bit hotter than I think I can get away with. I'll take mine a little softer or a little older, Or they're doing the let's do the low key, don't have any show business. Let's be real. They're doing that stuff. If everybody's doing that, I'm going the other way. I'm going to be larger than life, in your face, highly produced. A lot of guns and whistles and shots and stuff going off, and heavy duty production. I'm going to go the other way because that's what I think would fit in the market. And I would start to hear that station, and then I would just simply go ahead and build that radio station. And and when you do that, you have an arsenal of things at your disposal that you can mess with. You have the jingles, and a lot of it is which becomes harder, trying to pick out a point of difference between your radio station, ideally one or two things that matter to people. So if you just say 8 in a row, well, does that really matter to anybody? Probably not really. Something that actually matters to someone, and then use the production in a lot of creative ways to keep hammering home why you're different or what you do. A lot of times it would be the opposite. It would be, we don't do this, and this. So then now somebody has a pretty good idea. Oh, okay, well, now I understand why they only do that. But what that is something that would be important to people. I'll give you, for instance, like when I was in Cincinnati, there was it was an AC radio station, reasonably hot AC, and we had good numbers, so there was people during the day. Saturday and Sunday when I got there, they had this really weird Cincinnati after dark, sort of like a smooth jazz meets massage parlor type of show. So it was really weird. So I changed it. I changed everything and turned it into what now would be a smooth jazz station by adding an AC, just R&B AC songs, that are popish in with smooth jazz, great tracks. So it all sounded like a smooth R&B station with some instrumentals. That's kind of what it ended up sounding like. But when we were selling the radio station, I just kept hammering, because I thought about it a lot. What would you do with this show? Well, on Saturday nights when you have friends over, you'd want something on in the background that you can talk and it would be okay and it wouldn't be wimpy. It's still kind of cool. So literally all the production for that particular show was, when the friends are over, on the weekend, and and you want a station on that you can feel good about, that's going to sound great in the background, and you can talk over and actually have a conversation with your friends. You're not going to put on the top 40 station. You're not going to put on the classic rock station. This is the perfect thing to put it on. And I had a whole bunch of different stuff that were saying things along that line, and a few other things sort of in that area. And we ended up having like monstrous numbers beyond my comprehension for that show.
Wow.
And I believe it was, because of that. You're using wording to make people, again, you're planting things in people's minds. You're making them, here, I'll give you something to think about. And okay, and then they start to think about it and then do what you want them to do. I feel a huge amount of a programmer's job is being a lawyer in front of a jury in a courtroom, and your client is guilty and you got to change their mind. I really believe that. I think that's a huge part of the job, and that comes with wording and production and all of that type of stuff, and finding your place in the market. Again, it comes with really tuning your ear to hear the differences. The more you can hear them, the more you can make yours different, if that makes any sense.
So Pat,
absolutely.
We have a lot of questions coming in, and we're going to get to those in one moment. But we've been teasing the greatest radio advice ever that you received as a young DJ in New York City. And in fact, it's lesson number 19, if you want to listen to the full description of it on the Musicom Academy website. And in fact, it was the first video of your series that I watched many months ago. And I said, watching that, we need to have you on the webinar. So the moment everyone's been waiting for, what is it?
Yeah. I got you with the hook, didn't I?
You did.
Got me with the teaser, with the YouTube teaser. Yeah. Okay. So, let me just set it up, and I'll try to do it as fast as I can for time here. I'm a new jock in New York. It's my first air check session. The PD is Sebastian Stone. He's the Billboard PD, winner, PD of the year for multiple years in a row. I'm not sure what to expect. I'm just a kid. I think I was 22 at the time. And I'm like, oh man, what's this going to be? He takes me into this room and he plays an air check. He got the air check. I didn't bring it in. He's got a reel to reel. He puts the reel to reel on and he starts playing it. And there's the usual air check stuff. Hey, I love this. This you could have done better. Here at this station, we try to do whatever. And I go through it, and he gets to the end, takes the tape off, and he goes, hey, you're doing a good job. I don't have any problems with you. You're good. So I think, okay, it's over. This is awesome. Then he takes out he takes out another tape. He puts it on the reel-to-reel recorder. It's an old thing back then. And this is what he says, and it floored me. And I have said this hundreds of times to jocks who's worked for me. He goes, this is what I want you to do. This is what I expect from you here. And this to me will make you a better jock and have you do better shows than you're doing now. On this tape, what I did is, this is your show. And I'm like, what does he mean by your show? We just listened to my show because it was the exact same air check. He had gone through and cut out everything that he, in his mind, gave me. So he cut out the title and the artist of the song. He cut out the time. He cut out the weather. He cut out the call letters. Everything was gone that he, as the station, gave to me. What he wanted and what he was explaining to me is, every time you open the mic, I want something of you on this tape. That's your show. It's not what I gave you. So I don't care how long it is, within reason. I don't care how short it is. Within reason, I don't care how long it is. I don't care how short it is. It might be 2 words. You might be a different type of wording. You might use your voice in a different way. It could be the tempo you're saying things. You could embellish the weather, like, oh my God, it's Halloween. It looks like, it's raining witches and goblins, anything that you threw in that he didn't give. I want something there every single time you open the mic. And it was like, okay, as a jock, I got it. I know what you want me to do. You want me to entertain in some way every single time. And you've given me a sort of almost like a narrow reference of what's cool with you that makes you happy. It wasn't like a wide open, you're facing a blank page, which is daunting. He narrowed it down to make it easier for me. And I just thought that was unbelievable advice. I mean, it was, that was a life changer for me.
And of course, you later shared that with hundreds of people that work with you. And
Absolutely.
What was the reaction?
I mean, pretty much the same reaction from everybody. It's like, oh my God, okay. Now I totally understand what you want, because sometimes when somebody comes to you and they say, hey, a lot of times you say, hey, I need you to be more entertaining. It's like, what does that mean? I need you to be up more. Well, what does that mean? I need you to kind of do some more things, be a little bit more creative on the show. Well, what does that mean? This really narrowed it down. Like, okay, what you want for creativity is something that's going to end up on that second tape every time I open the mic. It just simplified the thought process. And, and then it was easy at that point to just lean into, give him what he wanted. And, and all the jocks on the station at the time would, he did the same basic air check session in the beginning with all of them.
Great idea. And really, what he's really saying is he wants more of you.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, 100%. And he's defining what's okay. He didn't really, he didn't say don't do this or don't do this or don't do that or whatever. It's like, whatever you want to do is cool. This is what's acceptable, and go nuts. I'm wide open to anything. That's pretty much also what was in there, what he was saying. And, and a lot of people, I think at the time, if I just kind of add this in, a lot of people look back, because it was a Bill Drake radio station, ORFM in New York City at the time, most listened to FM in the United States at the time. A lot of people would say, wow. Oh, gee, that station, everything was liners and everything was, 10, 15 seconds. That's all you were allowed to talk. It's like, that wasn't true at all. You could do anything you wanted. It's just that the way the station was set up, to go back to what you were asking earlier, Andy, about, how the station set up, it was set up to be a machine that just didn't stop. It was continually just coming, and you had to jump in and out on the intros and the extras while the whole thing was moving. It was almost like somebody turned automation on and just let it go and said, jump in with the mic where you think you can. That was the way the station was set up, and that's the way it was produced, so to speak. That was its feel. But you could do anything you want. You're wide open. You weren't handicapped. So yeah, it was cool. It was very cool.
All right. So we're gonna get some questions, but just wanted to remind everybody to check out the website musiccomacademy.com. because there's how many lessons now posted? Nearly 30?
I think there's 29, 30 right now. So somewhere in there. I think actually I'm working on one right now, which I think will make it 30.
And where does this end, Pat?
It ends when it ends when either I die, because I am old. I'm like 73. It's like I'm an old guy, or I just run out of things to share. I'm kind of envisioning there's going to be probably at least, the way I'm going, and I'm starting to get questions like, what's on here, of people asking questions. People are starting to email me stuff, and it's like, ooh, didn't think of that. That's a lesson. So I'm guessing there'll be 60, 70. I might even get up to 100 lessons. Once you get going, it's kind of easy to keep doing it. Yeah. And
of course, it's all free. And I know some of the very early lessons may seem very basic to somebody that's been in radio for a while, but as you move forward, we're really getting into some complex topics and issues that, again, as we pointed out today, some programmers don't even think of some of these things anymore. So it's really a great course, and we encourage you to visit the website and share it. And it's, again, free of charge, and really amazing and very gracious of you to share a lifetime of radio knowledge with the world. So thank you for that. And as you said early on, it's sorely needed.
Thank you. Yeah, I got the new one that's just coming up is one of those basic but pretty complex ones. It's about time spent listening and laying out how time spent actually really works. And I'm showing you person by person and how the average time of listening to a radio station changes, so that you're not going to be playing 2,000 songs for your library, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway, but thank you for that.
Okay.
So questions?
Yeah, first question.
Berkowitz is on the line. Look.
Who's that?
Gary Berkowitz is on
oh, there you go. Your old friend.
Yeah.
And next month's guest, which we'll tell you more about in a couple of minutes. But first question I'm going to take is from Andre Carson. Pat, what are the key qualities of a great radio station to you?
Ooh, key qualities of a great radio station. Well, one, so some of this is going to sound a little bizarre, and some of this will, probably seem basic. I think a radio station, has to have really great music. And to me, great music is a ton of the music is familiar. It's what you would expect. And then there's a certain percentage, and it would sort of vary by format, of surprises. Kind of like you're on a road and you're driving along, and right about the point where maybe you fall asleep on the road, and you veer off and you hit those bumps on the side of the road. Those are those other songs where you go like, oh, that was cool, and then you're back into the normal. So that would be the music, and that there's somebody sort of curating the music, and it's like it's just not the normal stuff. They're putting some thought into it, so that would be that. I think. To my ear, I also listen for processing of a radio station. I've heard some processing of some stations where it's sort of dead and boring, and it kind of, I don't know, it does something to ruin the station to my ear. Other ones where I would listen to, where if I was in my car and the station was really, really low, and I started to turn the radio up and a jock was talking, the first thing I would start to hear faintly would be the jock. Then the music would start to kick in. So, I would listen for that, and that the jock is buried down in the music. And then what the jocks are saying, are they entertaining? Are they just going through the motions? Is this a voice track station that's incredibly obvious? Or is it voice track, but I can't quite tell? And things like that. A lot of it is just, you sort of get a feeling of this is a great station, taking in its totality, of everything. I mean, I know it's a hard. Sorry, man, it's kind of a hard thing to answer of specifics, but it's like an onslaught of all of it at once, and you go like, that's really a good radio station. The music is good, the jocks are good, the production is great. They're pretty creative and inventive of what you're saying, or in another way of putting it, a great radio station is one that I would want to steal stuff from. If I listen to it and go like, well, there's nothing here that I would want, probably not a good radio station.
Next question comes from Melissa. Melissa, any advice on what if hosts disagree with the direction you're trying to move a show, in brackets, news talk station? So I think what you said before, make it their idea, is definitely one of those. But if somebody disagrees with you and the direction you want to move a show to, like, how do you approach that person, that discussion, that concept?
Yeah, well, let me just throw this out first and foremost. If it went on too long and I couldn't change them, I would let them go. Sorry, I just would, because that can be a cancer for all the other people. Now, that being said, I would try everything in my power to not do that, because I hated doing that as any kind of a boss. I would try to make it their idea, or I would sit down and try to find out why they don't want to do it. Because usually there's sort of a reason. They have some reason in their mind of why they're doing what they're doing. I used to have amazing conversations with the guys that on my news talk radio station. I remember one conversation they came in and one guy started to explain how it's like to be on the air where he's got a topic, and there's stuff that I never thought of. It would have never crossed my mind. He's got a topic. He's got a 1 hour topic. He's 10 minutes into it, and he's fighting one side of the topic, okay? And the other side of the topic, a caller blows him out of the water, and he knows he's blown out of the water. But he's got to keep fighting and win that argument, because otherwise, for the remaining 50 minutes of that show, he's done. There's nothing for him to do if he gives in. So on the fly, he's arguing with that person to try to make his point and then get rid of the caller. And he's looking at the call screen going, that caller, this caller, this caller, they have stuff that I can argue with and get down to the bottom of the hour. When the news comes on, I can recoup a little bit, figure out what I'm going to be doing. And I'm going, my God, all that stuff runs through your mind during when that's going on? He goes, yeah, that and so much more. And then it opened up into other questions where they start to tell you vulnerabilities or things that they worry about, or I may not be able to, maybe in your instance, I may not be able to do that. I don't want to do it because I don't know if I can do it. I might suck at that. So therefore I don't want to do it. So you kind of want to, I would want to find out why the person's saying that. If it's just to be obstinate or be a jerk or whatever, then, maybe, the thing you don't want to do is the thing that you're going to have to do. Again, that would be, to me, super last resort. Hope that helps.
All right, a few more questions. Some of this is about production technique and putting the radio station together. So Greg writes, when a recorded liner plays between music,
yeah,
is it okay to talk after that liner and post to vocals? He says he tried it once and his PD told him not to do it, but he liked the way it sounded.
Okay, so there's a produced ID or a sweeper, and then you're going into music, and he wants to talk after it. Is it
correct? Yeah, right? Between the produced liner and the vocal.
Yeah, I would say no. No, I don't think that. Okay. I don't think that would sound good. Now, what I might do in that instance, and I actually have done it with some stations. WFIL in Philadelphia, used to have the most amazing IDs because they would start off with production. And then they would start rolling the top ID song underneath the ID and make it hit the cue. Even if the ID was like 6 seconds long and the intro was 10, they would move it in 4 seconds when they started them both at the same time to hit. So I might take production and, in a sweep and start the song under it so that the two mesh, and they become one. That might be kind of cool as a sound. But no, because if they're done well, if an ID or a splitter is done well, and hopefully they're self-contained, they're written really well, and somebody has agonized over every word. The production has been agonized to make some sort of emotion and feeling and be able to slam into something. If you come in after that, you're going to ruin that. You're just going to ruin that whole effect. That would be my. Are you agreeing, Andy, or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I hate it if they talk over my production. I hate it if they talk over production elements. I think there's certain formats you can come away with it, but there's certain formats you can come away with it. But mostly if they talk over the stuff, it's just, oh God, yeah, you're right, absolutely.
You just, I think you ruin the emotional flow because there's a flow going on there that you're unaware of, of how much work has been put into that to make it perfect.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, Pat, going to grab another question from Scott Williams in Dublin. Any tips on how a PD can influence corporate?
That's a good one.
Yeah, good luck with that.
All right, next question now.
Yeah. It's probably incredibly hard in this day and age to do that. I mean, it can be done. I could do that when I was working for Standard. but I was in the home office building, so it made it easier. I simply had to go upstairs to the owner of the company. It was a family company, a billion-dollar company with a ton of radio stations coast to coast. And he was upstairs, and I just go, hey, Gary, what do you think about this? And he was a PD himself, and his father was a PD. So that helped. So they really understood programming.
Absolutely.
So you can do it. I did it one other time, a major time, when I got to do that station Light FM in Detroit. At the time, it was called W Light, and it was on the satellite. Remember when satellite radio was a thing ages ago? And I don't mean Sirius or XM. Stuff came down off a satellite, and I took one show live, and it started to sound great. And I literally talked corporate into taking them totally off the burden, canceling the contract and making us go live, which was the start of us finally going from dead last radio station, fifth FM AC in a market. Who in the right mind wanted to be the fifth FM AC radio station in any market? But, when we were successful, finally getting off the bird. But it's hard for a PD to do that. They sort of have to trust that you know what you're talking about, and you're going to have to kind of lay out a pretty easy argument for them. I would say go back to intuition. I would try to step back from it. I'm in some instances, this is going to sound really weird and crazy. I would, in some instances, sit in my office and I would close my eyes if I had to let somebody go, or if I was in a situation like you're just describing, and I would close my eyes and try to feel what the other person is going to feel when I start to talk to them. Like, what's going to run through their mind? What are they going to be pushing back against? What are they going to probably want to say no to? And I would want to address that or have ready answers for them when they did that, and something that, I was guessing that they would be okay with. But it's hard. It's hard to change corporate, especially today. I mean, in a lot of instances, you're talking to people who aren't radio people.
Yeah, also with the economical limitations and stuff. I mean,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Pat.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
So I want to ask you one more question before we wrap up, and this comes from, I hope I say the name right, Sakis, which probably in Greece, I'm guessing. And we talked earlier about how to manage creative. Now he's asking, how can we creatives help PDs in ways other than what we do?
Wow, that's a good one. It's just something I tell my kids. That's just something I tell my kids all the time. I know you're not supposed to do this, and I'll tell you the outcome of if you do that. Okay, good outcome. I had people, in every situation that worked for me, the more they made my job easier in some way. They were the person, let's say they were a production person, I can remember one instance, I had two production guys, okay? And something would come in late, or a spot would come in, and the traffic director comes into me and goes, oh, we need this on the air. And, it came in, 10 minutes late. And I'd go to one production guy, hey, can you get this on the air? Oh, man, it came in late. And song and a dance, yeah, I'll do it. But, I got an appointment, or I got to be late, or whatever. And then there's the other guy, I'd kind of go into him and he goes, yeah, no problem. What do you want? Sure. And he would just do it. I would lean extra tickets, things. I'd be leaning toward that person. That's human nature. You would do that because they're helping you. So what can you do is to look at your PD and go, all right, well, or your boss or manager or whatever, and go, well, what do they do that I can help them at? What can I do to make their job easier? And just try to come up with those type of things. And maybe it's shielding the person from complaints. Maybe it's shielding the person in some way from other people going in and bugging them. Maybe it's, hey, what are you working on? I'm doing this and I hate doing this. Really? Well, what is that? Oh, I got to do the whatever report. Can I do that for you? Well, you know how to do it? Well, no, but show me. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's easy. Here, you do it. I mean, it's stuff like that. I mean, that's what I loved when people would do that unsolicited to me. And I would say do the same thing to you. Make yourself invaluable. If they're going to let somebody go, it's not going to be you that helps them. It's going to be somebody else.
Yeah, that's a very uncommon quality these days, I feel. Yeah, having a hard time finding people who do this. And the example with the production is great because Zach is a personal friend and he's a production manager, I think. So we hit the nail on the head here. So without even knowing. So that's great. So that's great advice.
Thank you.
So a last comment here. I mean, there's some really nice comments about the website, musiccomacademy.com. Greg Wilson writes, thanks, Pat. Website
I built that
looks
myself.
packed. Yeah, there you go.
I built that
with an
myself.
Apple Commodore.
Yeah, techie guy. Oh,
But
man.
it says
Go ahead,
website
sorry.
is
Yeah.
packed with quality content and ideas. We encourage you to visit it. You can watch whatever you want, whatever order you want, and certainly if you find the content helpful, please feel free to share it. I mean, Pat has done an incredible job and just graciously sharing so much wisdom with the radio world and community. So thank you so much. It's really amazing. And today was just a sampling of the great work that's on the website.
Thank you. Very kind words. Thank you. And thanks for having me on here, you guys, because I know you only, you do one of these a month. So it's rarefied territory to be on. I really appreciate it. It's really nice of you.
Our pleasure.
Welcome.
Our pleasure, Pat.
And we're certainly excited to see the additional chapters as they're added in the coming months at musiccamacademy.com. So thank you, Pat. Next webinar, we're going to take a little bit of a break because we know a lot of people, it's holiday season, but we're going to come back on Thursday, the 26th of August at 1 p.m. Eastern, 7 CET. And that session will be called Programming in 2021, What It Takes to Win Today, with a guy named Gary Berkowitz, who actually worked with Pat at some point.
Let me just tell you, it'll be a good webinar because I worked for Gary. I worked with Gary, and I hired him as a consultant too. So, there's somebody I worked with, and I hired him later. He really knows, he knows he's a good programmer. He really knows what he's talking about. He'd be great.
Maybe you can give us some insights and some color commentary and some question material for that. If you guys know each other that well.
We'd really like embarrassing photos.
Yeah, exactly.
Try to dig those up.
Maybe videos these days, Ken. Maybe videos.
So Gary today is the top AC consultant in the world. So we look forward to having you back on the 26th of August. And on behalf of Professor Pat Holliday, thank you. Andy and myself, Benztown.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for watching. Again, these videos of today's program will be up tomorrow on all our social channels and the P1 website and the Benztown website. And Pat, we're going to send you a copy too if you find it worthy to be on the MusicCom or somewhere else.
We'll put it on.
Feel free to share that. And again, take a moment to visit the website because MusicCom Academy is a terrific resource.